My next guest is Hans Vestberg. Hans Vestberg, just briefly give you a little background. He's the chairman and chief executive officer of Verizon, a company everybody knows quite well. Hans, can you hear me and see me now?
Yes, I can.
Well, I guess that's because we're using Verizon technology, so it's working. So
yes.
People's background, Hans is a native of Sweden. He was for 6 years the CEO of Ericsson, which is the largest telecommunications company in Sweden and one of the largest in the world. And he came in 2017 to become the chief technology officer of Verizon. And within about a year, he was made the CEO and the chairman in 2019. He is a native of Sweden, as I mentioned, a graduate of Uppsala University, which I was interested to learn was started in 1477. And Hans is a nationally ranked, was a handball player and was, I guess, the head of the Swedish handball committee, Olympic committee, but now is devoting himself to Verizon. So welcome here. And I should point out that the market cap of this company is roughly $227 billion, roughly $131 billion of revenue annually, and about 135,000 employees. Is that more or less right?
That's more or less right.
Okay. So are you running this company remotely during COVID-19, or do you have an exception because Verizon is essential to the operation of the country, so you don't have to operate remotely? How have you been running the company?
I've been running the company remotely for some, I'm not sure, 18 weeks or something like that. But of course, as a company, we have never closed. I have roughly 135,000 employees. As I said, 120 or 115,000 of those employees has been working from home, and that we did very early on in February. But some 20,000 of our employees are in the field. They are field engineers that actually need to install broadband at hospitals and critical places. And we have also, at the low point, we have only 30% of our stores open to serve customers, small and medium customers and consumers that need this necessity. Today, we have probably 60-70% of our stores open, and we're aiming for 100% pretty soon. So we have never closed, but we have had a big part of our employees that had worked from home. And of course, from a necessity, I can work equally good from home at the moment. And in respect of my colleagues, that's why we have stayed home, all of us, and worked virtually.
Well, if there's any one company that shouldn't have technology problems, like if you call the Verizon repairman to come to your house, I assume he comes pretty quickly.
I think that we do that for every customer. And in these times, I would say the most important infrastructure in the country has, of course, been the infrastructure of hospitals and care. But secondly, is actually the technology and the broadband, because without that, businesses cannot operate, people cannot be connected, they cannot connect with their friends. So we have actually been trying all the time to keep the networks up for our customers. If they're small and medium or large enterprises or consumer, doesn't really matter. So that's how we have worked, and it has really performed well. Our network has performed excellent so far in this crisis.
So have you had a lot of your employees who contracted COVID-19 because a lot of them are interfacing with people, or has it not been a problem?
I think that as a corporation, of course, we have had infections on employees, and we track every employee that has got COVID-19, and we give them support with a nurse, etc. So follow them all the way through this dangerous pandemic or COVID-19 that you have. So it's more that they have friends and family, more than that they have been working for us and doing work with us. But we have also changed the whole way we're delivering services in the field. We are doing touchless retail, so you don't need to touch anything if you want to come into our stores. We have changed so we can install Fios, which is our broadband, without going into the home of our customers. So the innovation has been extremely high in this time to see that we protect the health and safety of our employees, which is the #1 priority in all these crises that we have at the moment.
So let's suppose I'm new to getting a cell phone, and I say, I don't know, I should have AT&T or Sprint or Verizon. Why would I want to pick Verizon? Why is Verizon better than these other companies I just mentioned?
I think historically we have won all the awards, third-party awards of the best network, the best coverage, the best speeds, the best quality of the network, and that's why we also are leading this market. And I think that's really what is a key differentiator. We build our network very resilient, and you can see this in the pandemic. You don't fix the network of the broadband network, the fixed network, and the wireless network when you get the pandemic and data changes dramatically in the network. Do that over years. We spend roughly 18 billion US dollars a year in our network. So that's a key differentiator, and that's why customers stay with us. And that's what we need to give our customers.
Okay, so let's go through the main businesses of Verizon. There was a business, I guess you still have it. I have some fixed line telephones in my house. I don't know why I still have them, but I have them. Are those, that's not a growth business, but is that business going down like 2% a year, or some percentage people are just keep dropping they're cutting the cords on the fixed lines?
Yeah, the landline is going down for home telephony because it's substituted by mobile phones or voice over Wi-Fi and other solutions. So it doesn't go away that you're talking at home. It's just other means how you can solve it. And in our way, we think it like this. We have a network that from the data center to the edge of the network is the same network. At the edge of the network, we decide what type of access you should have as a customer. Sometimes it can be 3G, sometimes it can be a landline, something can be fiber, it can be 5G, it can be 4G. That's how we have designed our network and transformed our network the last couple of years. So at the edge, we decide what the customer wants to have or what the customer is asking us to give them. And landline for phone is going down slightly all the time right now, but it's substituted by using the wireless phone or voice over Wi-Fi or other solutions to speak at home.
So like in your house, do you have landlines, or you've given up on landlines? You just have wireless?
I have wireless, but I have also fiber to my home. That's why I can be on this good sort of video conferencing we have right now. So I only have wireless for the voice, yes.
And of course, if you have a problem, you don't have any problem getting a Verizon person to come out and fix it, right?
I don't have any better service than anybody else. We have a high standard for service for all our customers. That's very important. So I don't have anything special than others. I have the Fios at home, I have a 4G phones, and I have a 5G phone, and that's how I operate.
Okay, so talking about wireless now, wireless 5G is what we're all hoping to get, I guess. Why is the United States so far behind in both 5G manufacturing and also in the deployment? Why is that, do you think?
First of all, I think your statement is wrong because US is first in the world on 5G. We are leading when it comes to deployment on 5G in the United States. And let me just go back a little bit. I will come back to the infrastructure later on. But historically, when 5G was designed, which was 2010, and I worked in another company, the whole idea was actually to do a technology that can actually solve problems for industries and society. Because 2G to 4G is basically, you got the phone from the beginning, you can talk in, and ultimately you have a 4G phone with Netflix. Very much consumer driven. Let's say that you have throughput and speed improving. When it comes to 5G, it's 8 capabilities that we're building. It's extremely low latency on the wireless network. We can connect 1 million devices per square kilometer. We can capture a drone in 500 kilometers per hour with the 5G signal. All of that is done for industries. So that is the first thing. So when we look at our business, Verizon, and how we build a network, I have 3 business cases on the same 5G. 5G mobility, that's when you get the 5G phone and you get an enormous throughput. It's 10x what you had before, etc. Then it's 5G home. Instead of getting fiber to the home, I have 5G to the home. That's a totally new way of using wireless network. And lastly, I have 5G mobile edge compute. That's when we bring out the compute and storage and cloud services to the edge in order to do totally new services. Verizon has launched all of these services: mobility in 2019, home in 2018, and the mobile edge compute in 2019. The reason in the US why we don't think we're so far ahead is that we have a very high penetration on iPhones in the United States. And Apple has no 5G phone yet. So that's why consumers feel that there is 5G here. The coverage is here. All my competitors is building 5G as well. So it's not only Verizon, but we have been launching first in the world on all the technologies. And we just came out as having the fastest 5G network in the world in the third-party assessment. So we are actually leading when it comes to deployment in the world on 5G right now. Then you had another question on infrastructure, which is a totally different question.
Well, on that question, your former company, Ericsson, is a leading company in manufacturing 5G equipment. And in fact, the U.S. government has leaked the fact that it was actually thinking of investing in Ericsson. Why do you think the U.S. manufacturers haven't really deployed or built up 5G technology equipment?
The matter of fact is that 2002, it was 15 companies in the world that can supply 2G and 3G equipment. Some of them you might remember. They were called Lucent, they were called Alcatel, they were called Siemens, etc. It has been a brutal business, and it's basically only 3 companies left. And 2 of them has been hanging on all the time, Ericsson and Nokia. And then we have a Chinese that has introduced herself during this 15 to 20 years. So it's been just a brutal business, and basically all US companies doing infrastructure, like Motorola, even Qualcomm did infrastructure for a while, has either went bankrupt or they divested it. And that has ended up that US has a fairly small amount of research and development on wireless technologies. Qualcomm will be the only one that is really doing something essential in this area. And of course, this is the 21st century's infrastructure. I mean, mobility, broadband, and cloud. That's the 21st century's infrastructure to combat some of the largest challenges we have on Earth.
Now, while one of your other businesses is content, you have bought, or your predecessors bought, AOL and also Yahoo. And then your competitor bought Time Warner. So are you thinking of getting more into the content business, or is there anything you can say about content as a part of Verizon?
No, I've stated several times that we feel really good about our online services, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo News, which is really good assets when you come into 5G and virtualization and all of that. We have also stated very clearly we're not interested in long form content, and we're not going to invest in that. We have other areas we can grow, and we prefer to partner. Like we have an exclusive with Disney Plus, we have an exclusive with Apple Music. So we think we have the best network, the best brand, and the best distribution. And by that, we can actually attract the best brands to work with us, like Disney and Apple.
Okay, so during the COVID-19 crisis, I'll call it crisis, a lot of people have been using video conferencing services, and I know there's a word for it that people use. It's, I hate to use the word Zoom, because there was a word like Xerox at one point, and Xerox went out of business, even though it became a verb. I don't know whether Zoom is doing well or not, but you have that kind of business. You bought one that does that, called Blue Jeans. Is that what you bought?
Yeah.
So is there?
Yeah, sorry.
So is there any difference between these video conferencing businesses? Are they all the same? And how did Zoom get to be the verb, saying I'm using a Zoom or something like that? How did they get to be so generic?
No, I think that there are different type of video collaboration tools, and of course some are enterprise grade and have a lot of security. Some are consumer and sort of free without charging. Blue Jeans is on the upper level of enterprise and quality and high security. So I think that's different. But Zoom has positioned itself, at least without me having any opinions about it, as a freemium or a free service, which means that has been a word being used. But if I look at collaboration tools, there are many of them, and they're a little bit different segmented in the market.
Okay, so when the world comes back to what it was before, do you expect that you'll bring all your employees who are working remotely back to the offices, or do you think they can work remotely at home forever, or do you think you don't need as many employees as you have?
So first of all, you need to think about your employees. That's the most important. I mean, you need to, even if I would say that please come back to work, they wouldn't come back to work today. Because they don't feel safe to go to those places. So we will see that we do the best for our employees to actually be productive and feel that they are part of our company. I think that we're going to have parts of Verizon that probably will continue to work from home for a foreseeable future, but they will have sort of offices where they can have social gatherings, where they can meet their managers now and then, but the main place for the work will be at home. And it will be a portion of our employees that actually will come back to work, but it will take time. We have just opened this week, and we let 25% of our employees come every week, and we have a 4-week rotation. So this is my week when I can come into work, and the next 2 weeks I cannot come in. We're going to see how many that's coming, but mainly is that for employees that feel that I don't have the environment at home to work, or I need to collaborate with someone, but then we have a lot of, and actually you're going to be approved on an app before you can go in, and then we have a lot of processes and procedures to actually in office as well.
So how, you obviously must be very talented to be at Verizon for only 1 year, more or less, and you became the CEO. When you left Ericsson, did you expect you would be the CEO of Verizon when you joined Verizon? That's pretty quick ascent up the corporate ladder.
No, when I left Ericsson, I decided to never work again, and I decided to work with the UN, the United Nations, and to work with the Olympic movement as the chairman of the Olympic movement. But sometimes, whatever you decide, things are changing. And my predecessor asked me to come in to be part of designing the 5G strategy for Verizon. And I said, hey, I was part of the start of it, and I would love to be first in the world with 5G. And that's how we brought me in. And then one thing led to another, which I'm not sure how it happened, but 1 year later, I became the CEO and the chairman. So no, I didn't see that. This is my second employer. So I worked 28 years for Ericsson in 4 continents, 7 countries. I had a fantastic journey there. I felt that now I want to give back to communities and societies, sports, UN. But now I can do it from another position, as I think that the social capitalism is extremely important in times like this.
What is the difference between running a company in Sweden and one in the United States? How is the culture different? Is one better than the other, or different? And what was the biggest adjustment you had to make to running a company in the United States?
I think that Ericsson is a super international company, having employees in 180 countries. I was dealing with problems in Russia to China, and next week in the US. Of course, an extremely international company, not a Swedish company, I have to say. So of course, and I've lived in Latin America, I've lived in Europe, I have lived in the US, I lived in Mexico, I lived in China. So of course, I came with a very broad international background. So it's not that big different to run an American company, even though it's based in the US. Of course, we have business outside the US, but predominantly US business. So it's not that big different from a culture point of view. Then, of course, being a supplier, going to be a provider, that could be a bigger change. But culturally, it hasn't been that big shift, I have to say.
You talked about giving back. What has Verizon done to the communities in which it serves? Now, I assume everybody's come along because of COVID-19 and said, our community needs some help. Can you give us some support? But you presumably don't have enough money to give to every single community that comes along, because you're everywhere. So how do you decide where you're going to give your philanthropic support, and what have you done so far in the COVID area?
So what we did already 2 years ago, that we embedded in our strategy are 4 stakeholders: employees, shareholders, customers, and society. And so whatever we are doing, we see that the strategy is supporting what we do with society as well. So small and medium enterprises, for example, is super big for us. So we have worked with something called Pay It Forward, which has been a virtual concert every week during 10 weeks, and there we have gathered money and pay it forward to small businesses in your community, where we of course has chipped in as well. Another area has been education, especially STEM education. We are running some 350 schools with broadband, pads, and STEM education. Here we have just doubled down to support those schools as well. And ultimately, we have probably done some 50, 60 million US dollars supporting small and medium businesses, COVID-19 impacts, etc. And ultimately, we decided also to not disconnect any customer, consumer, or small and medium businesses that has been impacted by COVID-19, because they cannot go anywhere. And without connectivity, it's even worse, because the spiral is just increasing the gap and the inequalities that we have. So that's why we have kept the customers on our systems. And now we work with them to see how we're going to solve that over time, but not forcing them off.
Now, for a while, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe not so much now, but when I was using my cell phone, the coverage would drop. You know, all of a sudden it drops. You're talking, all of a sudden it ends. Particularly if you're driving on the Dulles toll road, it would seem to end. But is that problem largely gone away? If people don't have coverage dropping anymore, or has Verizon fixed that problem? If it was your problem alone?
Yeah, it's very few spots in the country that doesn't have mobile coverage today. There are, of course, some rural areas where basically there are no inhabitants, which might be without coverage, or it could be national parks that doesn't want coverage. But other than that, I would say the vast majority of all US citizens have mobile coverage today.
Now, some people say, maybe I'm one of them, when you get your Verizon bill, it's hard to figure it out. It's very complicated. Do you have that problem as well when looking at the bill, and that you get figuring out what charges are for what, or and that's not a problem?
No, I don't have that problem. But if you have that problem, you should call our customer care and they will walk you through it. But I have my family account because I have a family of four, you know, so I have a family account and I can see what I've charged for. So, but if anybody would feel that they don't understand the bill, I think you just call customer care and they will walk you through it.
Right. So the biggest complaint that you get as the CEO of Verizon, you must get some complaints from somebody. You go to a grocery store, they know who you are. People come up to you and say, well, my service isn't good, or can you have somebody come out as a repairman? Do you ever have any problems, or nobody ever complains or about anything?
Mainly, I have customers being very happy with the Verizon service. But of course, there are customers that are unhappy as well. Sometimes maybe a customer care employee has not treating them well, or it could be that we don't have Fios in their area. And that's one of the most frequent complaints I have, that why don't you can bring Fios to my area, which are broadband services? We're only serving 7 states in the United States with Fios because that's our franchise. So I have a lot of customers that want me to bring Fios to those markets. My answer is that I will soon have 5G home in your area. So you're going to get the Fios-like service, but it's going to be wireless all the time. So that's one of the more frequent complaints I have.
Okay, and let me just ask you 1 or 2 more questions. Generally, would you say that you think that the U.S. business environment that you're seeing every day, because you're part of it, you think that the worst is over for the COVID-19 economic decline, or would you say, based on coverage and usage of your phones, that basically the situation is getting better in terms of the economy coming back?
Yeah, I cannot draw the conclusion on my network usage because that has changed quite dramatically during this pandemic. It's hard to say. I think that my fear is that we're going to have a second wave like we see in certain states right now. And we have to close down in order to protect our citizens. And that, of course, will curb some of the business activity that is needed. We heard about the small and medium businesses that sometimes have to shut down and they never open again. So that is a fear that we have over time. What we have seen, and I said this publicly a couple of weeks ago, because it's an important information, that's what we have equally much delinquent receivables today that we had basically before COVID-19. So that means that customers are using our service equally much, but that doesn't mean that the economy and the impact on the most vulnerable in our society will not increase in the second half of 2020.
Okay, and recently I noticed that you pulled some advertising from Facebook because you weren't happy with Facebook. I number of reasons. Can you explain why you pulled your advertising from Facebook? Was that to demonstrate a concern about some of their policies?
No, it was a very clear. We have a commercial agreement. We have a brand that we think is extremely important that we keep intact, and we noticed that our brand showed up with content that was not agreed upon in our commercial contract, and very simple. We told them that if this content is showing up together with our brand, we take a pause until you have a remedy to it. We did the same with YouTube 2 years ago. So it's a brand protection for us. I mean, I cannot show up with my brand together with content that is so far away from what
I see.
What Verizon stands for. So right now I have a conversation with any partner how the remedies will be done by Facebook.
All right, a final question. The most used day of the telephone service every year in the United States is Mother's Day. And I'm told that now you're using the telephone usage is higher, sometimes twice as high as it was on Mother's Day. So is that going to continue? You think people are just going to use phones so much more than even on Mother's Day?
On the peak in the pandemic, somewhere in April, we saw 800 million calls a day and 9 billion messages a day. That's twice the amount of calls compared to Mother's Day, which is the highest day of the year. And it's more messages than on New Year's Eve. That we have seen for months. Now it's calming down a little bit. We are coming down to a little bit more normal, still much higher than normal. But that's what we have been operating under for the last 6 months.
Okay, well, thank you. Look, I use Verizon. I'm very happy with it. I think I can understand the bills generally. But thank you very much. And good luck to you on keeping 5G very popular and getting it built out. Thank you very much, Hans.
Thank you very much.